There it went live. All right, let's get two of our three Instagram going here. We tried to get the third Instagram, and sorry, one of these weeks all we'll end up and we'll get the technical stuff worked out. But we are currently live on Facebook, two Facebooks, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. We got figured out tonight, and two Instagrams, and we've got Rumble over there. So welcome to all of you, and welcome to my lovely roundtable guests and co-hosts and coaches and all our lovely friendship that we have. Welcome, ladies.
Hello, hello. Welcome. So, I'm sure before we get started, let's just talk about the fact that we are no longer called Healing the Whole Body. We're now called BNC Community. We have we're streamlining, we're kind of doing some fun stuff on this. And part of what we're a little more structured now. We're going to have Coach Sly, welcome Sly, to every month for a coaches roundtable. So, what we ask for you to do is please comment, subscribe, like. It helps the algorithms. We are not sponsored by anyone, so we do appreciate your help. So, welcome, Becky, Sly, and me to the Coaches Roundtable. How is everyone?
Good. How about you, Sly? I kind of already did my spiel. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. I'm just glad to be here with you ladies. Take an hour out of my reality day.
I think that's the truth. That's what I've always said. I don't know who decided to do this podcast and on a Monday night, but why Monday of all nights, right? But
Right?
It's a good night. It's a good night.
for those listening to audio, I know it's Tuesday for you, so we appreciate y'all. But it does it takes that hour, even though it's real conversation. It still takes that hour out of our day, right? Where we're worrying of work and we're worrying of this and that, and maybe it's client calls or whatever, right? And it's just changes that speed for a while.
So, before we started, we were literally talking about the time that our sunrises are happening. Sly, when is yours?
About 7:30.
Ugh. How about you, Becky?
Which is so surprising to me because you're further north than me, and mine's at, well, my circadian app says it's at 7:17.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'll give you the technical answer here for today. It's not the Circadian app. It was at 7:33.
It is getting later and later, and we are transitioning seasons. I definitely noticed that when I went shopping this weekend and did my meal prep. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, it does take a switch on my morning sunrise walks for sure. Like a 30-minute difference, almost a 40-minute difference within like a week's time.
Yeah, it changes fast. That's definitely, when you're looking at things from a circadian perspective, it's amazing how that shifts. Even though you may end up and be very diligent about it every day, it's just there's some days where it's like, okay, it shifts, only by a few minutes, and then other days it's like, wow, where did that half hour go? Right. And it's a lot, especially when we're trying to work on, things such as burnout, right?
Yeah.
And parasympathetic and really respecting the circadian rhythm and nighttime. And I mean, I know on our YouTube, they've noticed that my red light's on because it's getting dark earlier. So our days are definitely shortening.
It's dark here too. I have my red lights on. You just can't see them.
Yours isn't quite reflecting off the wall like mine bounces
No,
around my room.
I've had my red lights out like for a few years now. I have a in my kitchen and in my living room and even in my bathroom. I have a little red light night light for at night, so I don't have to turn the lights on to go when my old lady bladder is a calling.
Well, and and I think that's the biggest thing. You said that you've had them for quite a while. The consistency, right? None of us three are anywhere near perfection, right? But we're consistent with it, right? We're still getting out there and we're doing those walks. We're still rolling our window down, driving to work. I mean, Sherri, I'm sure your morning routine looks different than ours.
Oh, yeah. How do you mean? My morning routine is just so messed up. Is that what you mean?
No, I mean the fact that you're driving to work. I don't
Yeah.
have to drive to work. Sly doesn't have but a few blocks, I think, to get to work.
I don't even have a few blocks. I have a corner to turn.
So, I mean, you're the furthest that has to end up and drive. And
I drive 7 miles. Yeah.
hey, I go from my bedroom to the rest of my house. So,
Yeah.
I
used to. But yeah, no. No, I've been when I drive, my window's cracked and I don't have I'm not even wearing my glasses, let alone my prescription glasses. I should be, but I'm not because I want that light in my eyes as I'm driving those 7 miles because it's worth it. And by the way, they're back roads, like they're not on any major highway.
But that's where it may not be perfect, right? It may not be this whole ideal day, right? I don't know of anyone unless they don't work and don't have a family, and maybe retired folks, I don't know. But any of your, middle age people have to end up and get up and go to work. They have to end up and show up, right? And how we look at our daily actions decide long term, right? So whether it's the morning light or maybe it's balancing meals, maybe it's, movement, whatever that ends up and looks like. But there's so many people also that they don't know where to start. And that's, I mean, as a coach, that's one of the biggest things that I see is people just don't know where to start. And how do they start being consistent with something, let alone be perfect in it, right? When they don't know where to start. So what advice would you give, or where would you set someone in regards of, maybe balancing meals?
Well, one, take perfection out of it, because if you're striving for perfection, you're always going to fail. It's just that's not a reality of it. The only people that I ever see, and they're still not perfect, and I tell it to all my people, if you have an emergency situation, right? If you have like a metabolic emergency situation, cancer, maybe your diabetes have got you, hospitalized or something like that, then you can start with steps, right? You can start with steps. You don't have to go all the way to over here straight out. And, I think the last time we talked about this, I think two of us was on the page of food. But you started with the sleeping, and that's actually, I think sleeping is a good place to start, and maybe a little bit with the food of getting like one meal at a time out of there. I have a lot of people that I talk with, they are starting their journey, and they get upset they sleep a lot. They're like, I'm sleeping, da 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 da. And I'm like, rest and repair. Sleep doesn't always have to be a bad thing if you're sleeping, If you're going 3 months, and maybe, if you're going 3 months and you're not making things, then maybe look at it. But sometimes that's all we can do, especially if we haven't been doing it right.
Yep.
If you haven't been getting the proper sleep that you need and the proper rest and repair that you need, then maybe having those longer sleeps is okay. Maybe taking those naps, it's okay to do those things and not really make it seem like, oh, I'm being lazy. I think that's where we get that, or that the opposite. And I know I've heard this a lot. I'll sleep enough when I'm dead. Have you guys heard that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's horrible, horrible, horrible advice. I wish people would have never said that to me, because you take that and run with it. Yeah, let's go.
Yep.
So I think that, nutrition is still a really big thing to start with, and one meal at a time. And I think that, like you said, the sleep, getting that sleep tune in, because that's where people go off trail, right? Is when they're tired. That's a big trigger for people. Stress
Well,
and tired.
absolutely. Sleep ends up and leads to the constant cravings, right? And cravings for non-healthy food, right? So if you're just starting out, the biggest, quote, metabolic hormone, in my opinion, is the leptin. It's like your metabolic compass, right? We always talk about hormones, and everyone always says, oh, insulin is the fast storage hormone. But when we really, and it is, don't get me wrong, it is, but when we look at hormone signaling, you have to look at the quality of sleep, not just quantity, right? So if
Right.
you're in bed for, 10 hours a day and you're only getting, your sleep sucks, right, during that time, then you're not going to end up and have the leptin docking to the brain, right? You're not going to end up and have that signal to your cells that, hey, we have energy on, our love handles, our butt and our thighs, right? So it's not going to end up and balance your day. Your hunger and your fullness are going to be so dysregulated that your energy is going to be wonky. You're going to be grabbing caffeine. You're going to be, in a 2 p.m. slump, and your body is just not going to end up and burn fat naturally and the way that it should. And I can't tell you how many times I have clients that end up and come to me and they're like, oh, I slept 4 hours, right? 4 hours isn't enough, right? And typically it's, oh, I'm going to bed at midnight and I'm getting up at, 4 a.m. so that I can go to the gym, or I have to be at work, or whatever, right? So this leptin signaling gets so disrupted that the brain, it like shuts down and goes deaf to every other, hormone signal in the body, from sex hormones to cortisol and beyond, right? So thyroid, that's another one that I see completely out of whack for a lot of people too. And when you get this deep sleep, your body recenters itself. So you talk about, rest and repair, but what is actually happening? And that's where the hypothalamus is reading that leptin signal. The cortisol starts to downregulate or drop, right? It ends up and it communicates that, hey, we don't have to rise. We don't need to, outrun a bear, right? And provide ourselves with energy through crappy carbs. But also when we get sleep, that human growth hormone, right? We were talking earlier of so many people that are wanting to utilize supplements
Mm-hmm.
and support, right, their tissue and support the body and support, I won't go into all of it, but when you're looking at that mitochondrial health, the circadian rhythm has to end up and be one. And that's why we also started out talking about sunrise. But it is so important to the body, in my opinion. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. The rest of you can end up and tell me about your morning and your balancing. Sherri, how do you end up and recommend balancing?
Phew. Well, it's been an eye opener for sure, because I work from home, so it was nothing for me to be able to, see the sunrise all the time. And now that I have to actually physically leave the house, the camper, by the way, not house yet. Um, I have to get up, and I know Becky will say I don't have to, but I choose to put makeup on. I'm in a professional setting, so I have, professional clothes on. I put makeup on. I still am very diligent about eating within 30 minutes of waking. The problem is I'm waking before the sun rises. I'm waking well before even the dawn is breaking. It is still dark. And I can only wear the blue blockers for so long, and then I have to put my eye makeup on, and I'm old, and I have to have my mirror up, my magnify. So I'm very less than perfect than what I was. So that's why I do what I do, right? I try to do everything in and around that to help with repairing my body, knowing that I'm not getting that optimal sunrise. Now, when I'm not working, you better believe I'm doing it, and I'm even eating outside while the sun rises. If you follow me on social media, you'll see I'll post pictures of my breakfast, and the sun is breaking, and you'll see it rising while I'm sitting there eating. Um, but it's interesting because I can relate now to more of my clients who is in that position, right? Or they work second shift, or there are a lot of factors out there, but it's not about being perfect, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. And one of the biggest things that you ended up said was you take your breakfast
Mhm.
outside.
Mhm.
And, I know that it is a protein rich breakfast, but
Mhm.
when people look at how do we balance meals, right? What is a macro? What is a macro percentage? What is, et cetera, right? Because there's so much information, whether it's on, one of the social media platforms that we're streaming to, there is so much dogma, but there's also so many sides to the coin of what works for a person. And so how do they end up and know where to start? What does, protein look like? What does,
Right.
a ideal breakfast or an ideal meal?
Well, I one you would this was brought up earlier of like, there is all that information out there and so many different ways to view it, but also there are people that have no clue what any of that is. And I think to us, because we see so much of it filter in, we're like, how do you not know what this is? I think we've just had it to us, but there's still, even with the information overload out there, there's still people that really don't know what a protein does, what a fat does, what a carb really does, or like what its uses are for. And so it actually it's actually kind of shocks me when somebody doesn't know that. It actually shocks me when I see people to this day with all the knowledge that I have and knowing the places that they go and the doctors that they have to see, and that they still eat the way that they do and have no clue that it's not okay, you know? But, like balancing meals, like what is that? I mean, I guarantee all three of our meals look differently, right? They all three look differently. They all go in different seasons. Even when we were all on one same, when we were all carnivore, they still all look different, right? And so, what is going to work for you? What is consistent? What do you like? What are you going to be consistent with? Does numbers make you weary? Like, I have people that hate tracking, hate tracking. So it's like, okay, so how do you keep it simple for somebody and do that? Some people like a short list of foods and that's all that they need. It's so individualized. I have to take it client by client. And I usually
Yep.
just tell them start with one meal. Like, that's all you can do with them is, and like, and if something happens, don't let it override all the good that you've been doing. I have a client who's, it's not a client, friend, peer. She's only like 4 months postpartum. She works at Subway. Like she works in a landmine, and she's been doing so good. And then like Saturday, she made a sandwich wrong. So there's this sandwich sitting in front of her, and she's just like, I wonder what this is going to taste like. And so it's just like, she said that, and I was like, it's okay. It's fine. Just make your next bite the right bite. In the 12-step program, they always say, do the next right thing. Right. So I guess my advice is like, set up something. If something goes awry, just make the next bite the right bite for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really get into the numbers games until it's necessary. For instance, I have one of my girls that I've been with for years. I'm her all-around person. I'm her boss at work, her food coach, her sponsor, all the things. And, she just was trying to get through things. And we did this one, and she basically was low carb, right? We didn't track. We just said what was appropriate and what was not. She could get away with some more things in. But then she had a seizure, right? So now things look differently. Now we have to track. Now we have to tune in. Now we have to make sure that we're doing things correctly, because her brain needs that right now.
And I think that's the big key, right? A lot of people end up and try to overanalyze. And for several years, that was me, right? I love the data. So it wasn't
not a junkie.
It wasn't that, it would spiral me or spin me out or, anything along those lines, or stress even for that matter. It was almost a second nature to me tracking the different macros, but to be strategic with it, because sure, things like being in ketosis, right, is a therapeutic tool. So, when someone is looking at that higher fat, I mean, when I was in carnivore, right, I had autoimmune, but I kept saying high fat worked until it didn't. Well, I'm seeing some influencers out there that are getting to other stages in their life, aka menopause, that high fat carnivore is not working for them anymore. Okay, so that was me because I had a hysterectomy, complete hysterectomy when I was 29. So what I was experiencing in my, 30s while I was trying to do carnivore, I wasn't necessarily doing it for a menopausal woman, right? So there's that strategy as well. As your hormones change, what you're doing may have to change. And I think also too many people, and like you said, unless they're having seizures, unless there's a therapeutic reason, they're so set in stone that this is my way of eating. And it's gotta work. It's gotta be something else, because they also they kind of put blinders on, right? They only look at nutrition as the only piece. And I was talking with a client earlier, and I said, if your levers, right, going back to what are the macros and what do they end up and do, the protein is your structure, right? Your protein is your builder. That is your, your set kind of, right? It makes up the muscles, the skin, the hair, blah, 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 right? That's your support. Your fat and carbs, or, if you choose to have carbs, I know we still have carnivore and low carb keto out there too. So, those two are your levers as your signalers, right? Your fuel source, your hormone side of things with fat, but then also in your thyroid as far as the carbs go. But I was in the meeting and I told them, I said, they were all about, calories and energy and calories this, calories that. And I said, it's not all about calories. And if you only go by calories, your food is going to look a lot different on carb days as what it is on your higher fat days. Because if you end up in volume wise, in order to get the same caloric value in protein and carbs, you're going to have to bring that up. There's only 4 calories in a gram of carbs and there's 9 in fat, right? So
Right.
we'll just end up at say you're eating 1600, right? In your carb day, you're going to have to pack the volume. And that can get very psychological with people when they're trying to hit a caloric number because it's more food. Why am I eating, why should I be eating all this food? I'm only supposed to be eating this amount of calories. Not putting that connection of you're eating 2 sources, right? Protein and carbs that are only 4 calories. So I said, I like to use my hands as examples. You have an avocado, for instance, right? Anyone in keto space and 99% of the spaces has ate an avocado. You put a potato on the other hand, same size, right? Fist size. Your potato is going to have less calories than what your avocado is because of the fats and the carbs. And it's the same volume, but it's going to look a lot different. And they just couldn't quite wrap their mind around that fact of what I was trying to get at, right? And when you're looking at things from a seasonal perspective, your foods are changing. Those root vegetables are going to end up and start coming in. And so that's really hard for them to understand how this hormone signaling and energy side of things. Granted, like I said, the food is only a third of the energy, but it's just trying to wrap their mind around how this meal should end up and look to not get high fat, high carb when you have to end up and switch those.
Well, I'm going to turn around and play devil's advocate like I did today at lunch talking to Becky. And I went back to when I started, right? Like each of us go back to when we started and, the concept of nutrition and, the food industry that profits from confusion, right? And what is good? Fats were bad. I mean, I grew up in that, or not grew up. I mean, I was an adult, but the whole fats were very, very bad, right? You remember that, Sly?
I do remember that very well.
Yeah, and I mean every food label was low fat, low fat, low
Thanks,
fat.
Dental Keys. Thanks.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And but going back, I remember, and I'll be brutally honest here. I wanted to get healthy. I wanted to reverse my type 2 diabetes. I wanted to lose weight. I wanted all of it. But what I wasn't willing to do was stop the convenience of
Mm.
the quick meals and not planning ahead because that took too much effort. And I remember that very distinctly, which is so funny to where I'm at today. And I mean, I meal prep and things that are in the freezer ready to go. I did that yesterday. We were working on our property and it was like, oh, I've got pepperoni meatballs in my freezer that I had prepped. And actually, I still have a couple more batches in the freezer. I pulled them out, thawed them out, threw them in the toaster oven, and that's what we had last night for supper. So, but it was the fact that, but I would have never done that before, right? I would have went, well, we lived in, the fourth largest city in the US too. So you had everything at your fingertips. Where are we going to go eat tonight? What are we going to have? And not understanding things. And I remember early on, doing the old Dr. Google and going, what is keto friendly at Chili's? Or right. I mean, but I remember all this. And I think that is the mindset with a lot of with probably majority of the people starting out. What are your guys' thoughts?
Well, you're right. It's still the same, but I did have the convenience. I did have see a post from a friend of mine who said that in the last 2 weeks, they have spent $800 eating out. Like, that's more than $20 a day, right? That's that. And if you're going to have one meal, and I think that deters me from eating out most of the time with it. But like the convenience is nice. And I too, like, I'm a good for patties, burger patties, right? And with cheese. And that was my go-to thing for a long time starting out, especially during my busy season at work and stuff. And then I realized I have a, intolerance to certain cheeses, mostly highly processed cheeses, right? So that deters me from doing that. So I had to go back to like what you said. I've got burger patties in my freezer, ready to go in my air fryer in case I need some. I've got some avocado to put them out because that's going to be just as quick as going through a drive-through. So I've learned, or when I first got started out, I did a real simple. I got a hold of a recipe. It was called carnivore waffles.
You use that a lot.
I probably ate them so much. I don't know. I don't know how I still tolerate them. That's how much I ate them. But I can still eat them to this day. And it was easy. It was quick. And finding those simple things, it would help people. It's like they can't find those things, right? So they get decision fatigue really quick. That's what I find. Especially if they're have all those things going on. They have to go to work. They have kids. They have appointments, whatever's going on, a significant other. That decision fatigue can really take you out sometimes. So I like what you said, things that you wouldn't have done. But that's why we're here for them, is that they don't have to go find those things all by themselves, right? They don't have to get that decision fatigue. They can come into the community and get tidbits. Now they have to figure out what works for them themselves, right? We can't just do that. But like coming into a community, like that's how I found the egg, right? The egg waffles, the carnivore waffles, and it worked for me. And I grabbed a hold of that. And it's where I find a lot of my stuff and my tidbits along the way. And that's why I go and do other things at other places, why I go to treatment centers and I teach people my tips and tricks so they don't have to have the same effects that we may have had to do in the very beginning without a community to help us figure out how to get to where we're at or to help guide us. I think that's very important with it. Becky made my life a lot easier. And it was funny though, because it was really a sequence of events. I don't like what's that word, coincidences. I don't think anything's ever a coincidence. But I remember I had gotten a Snapchat from a friend, and she said something about fat fasting. I don't even know if she knew what she was talking about, right? I still don't even know if she really knew that. But something clicked in my head. And I was like, that sounds logical. Like, because I was working on my mental health at that point in time. And then I just happened to be in a carnivore community, and there just happened to be this crazy woman doing hot flat at the time. And like all these pieces of the puzzle fell together for me with it. And I needed the high fat, not for my hormones, but for my mental health at the time. So that tool was there when I needed it. And I still use it today, but like the community aspect of like finding that thing and not having that decision fatigue, not searching and relying on Dr. Google to tell me the truth. that what is keto friendly at Chili's.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's where I started. I mean, you know, we were, yeah, it was, but I didn't have a community. I didn't have, all I knew was that I'm going to go out my front door and I'm going to walk 4 houses down to the corner and then I'm going to turn around and come back. That's how I started. I mean, that's all I could do. Of course, I was doing it at lunch in the middle of the Texas heat, in the middle of summer when I decided to try that.
Now you're out there plowing your fields and digging holes and doing all kinds of
driving tractors, and yeah, I mean, I'm a whole mess now of different worlds than where I started 4 years ago. It's funny, but I you know, when you know, because I've recently had a client who just literally did not know what a whole food was. And I started going around, especially in the BNC community, in our group. I was asking the question to our members, what is whole food? Like, I wanted to hear what everybody had to say. What is whole food? I just, you know, and we did have some varying answers, didn't we, Becky?
We did. It was definitely all over the board. You know, it was. What's that, Sly?
No, go ahead.
It's just it was odd to see, you know, by region one, but just by age also of what a whole food was, right?
Yeah.
People don't know. Like, I get that, because that's what I start out as, just eat whole foods, and they're like, well, what is that? And my answer is anything without a label.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if it doesn't have a label and it doesn't have a list of ingredients, then it's probably a whole food. Doesn't make it the right whole food, but let's just start with that. You know, let's just start with that.
Well, and this goes back to that meeting and that conversation, because then that means things such as like frozen foods, right? Frozen vegetables, or, you know, the frozen burger patties. Are they not a whole food? You know, where do you end up and draw the line of where things end up and start to turn into a convenience food? It may only be a single ingredient, you know, beef, for instance, in the burger patty, or the vegetable may only end up and be, you know, whatever the vegetable is. But is that still considered a whole food, or is that considered a processed food?
Well, technically, we're going to get technical about it. It is processed to a certain extent, but it still remains intact also, right? There's not an ingredient. There may be an ingredient on that package, but it's definitely less than 5 ingredients. If it only has, especially if it's not mixed vegetables, it should only have 1 ingredient on there, right? You know, and we go through good, better, and best too, right?
Yep.
So good, better, best, and even good enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even good enough. You know, Ken Berry, he really helped me define like what this could be like, because when I started transitioning, I was in a community that didn't have a like a genre of food that you ate. It didn't have a specific plan. It just said, don't eat the white stuff, right? Don't eat sugar, flour, and sugar, flour, starches, right? Don't eat the white stuff. And so then you were up to yourself to figure it out after that. And as I started, and I've never been a veggie girl, let's just be honest. I've never really been a veggie girl. But when I first started to come over to be, you know, animal based, I was scared because I had one influencer tell me if I didn't eat nose to tail, I wasn't doing it right. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that. Becky, I still don't have that liver eaten. It's probably still in my freezer, buried somewhere, you know. But then I can remember Ken Berry coming across my
Yeah.
thing, and he's just like, eat what you can afford. You know, yeah, panda massage, unicorn fed meat is nice, but you don't have to have it. Maybe garden fresh vegetables watered with the rainbow water that was collected by the fairies, you know, might be nice, right? But you don't have to have that. If you can get down to your local farmers market, which by the way, right now is plentiful there, and can get some things. Or, we have I just found out here we even have a community garden, and all you have to do is like um devote 2 hours a week for however many weeks, and then every week they give you a big huge thing basket of vegetables from that garden. Yeah, for like so many weeks you get a huge cut from that for 2 hours of your time a week. Those are, you can do those things. I mean, and then if all you can do afford is canned vegetables and whatever else it is, eat what you can afford.
Mhm.
That's where I think is where you go. But if you're looking to get stuff that has like words you can't pronounce in them, you probably shouldn't be eating it. If you
Right.
can't tell me I actually go through this with my class. If you're reading a label and you can't identify the things that are on that label, you should probably not be eating it.
Well, and I think that's very wise information to pass on to clients because for the record, I was not one that said she had to eat nose to tail. I just told her
No,
to eat
no,
the
that
liver
was.
that's in her
We
freezer.
know who that was. Everybody out there in this community know who said that. I
But
don't have to drop any names.
but I think that is very, very good information because a lot of people are so stuck in this, free state because they end up and they feel like they've got to have, the wild caught, the grass fed, grass finished, the wagyu, et cetera, right? Where they can't simply go to a grocery store and get their meat. Okay, so it's CAFO beef, right? It is commercially raised beef. It may not be the best choice, but I would rather someone go to a supermarket and get some beef. Maybe it's a massive meat sale, aka myself. I just went and did that this last weekend.
Yep.
Um, and I got pork and
Yep.
I got beef, but I got several meals because one, food is expensive. I have a whole beef coming probably in the next month also. But in the meantime, in the interim, right, we went and shopped this massive meat sale. I got a bunch of pork chops. It was the primal cuts. So I got a pork loin, sliced it into my own chops. We got, New York strip. We've got a couple other of the primals of beef, but it's okay, right? It's okay to end up if that's what you can afford and you can't afford the grass fed, grass finish, shipped from halfway across the country because, that's the only place they raise it, right? It's okay. Whatever you can afford and you can do. Now, I'm not saying go out and, eat steak and bananas, but eating optimal food. But again, if it's someone eating cake and ice cream or a steak and a banana, at least they're getting the protein. Okay, they're still getting the sugar. They're getting the glucose from the dang banana that may not be in the right, season for them. But again, I'm not going to end up and go into that. It's still a whole food.
Well, it's interesting. We found this little local meat market, and I took my husband in there this weekend. I had went in there, well, because you can go in and pick out a cow and have him packaged up, or half a cow, or whatever it is. I mean, literally, you can go. I want that one, and then you come back and you have Frank in your freezer. So, but he has other things, and he actually makes his own broths. And I had a couple weeks ago tried his brisket broth,
Mm.
and I know, right? So I got it. We tried it. oh my goodness, was it good. Of course, we live in Texas, so he called it Texas brisket brat. And we went in there Saturday, and my husband was talking to the owner, and he said, "We really like that brisket brat." And he goes, "You know what the secret ingredient was?" And of course, I'm over at the other counter, and of course, my ears perked up, and I'm like, "Uh oh." And honey, honey. And for about a nanosecond, I panicked, right? I had honey. And then it was, yeah, I mean, isn't that, but that's been
That's how militant. Yeah.
correct. That's how very militant I was. And then it was like, how much honey was really in there? Because it wasn't like it was like uber sweet or anything. It was like, and I'm like, I'll get that again. And so this time, let's see, Saturday we tried his bacon cheddar brat.
Mm.
And I'm telling you, it was phenomenal. And I'm thinking I'm eating it and I'm going, there's probably honey in this too. And I'm still eating it. But I mean, but you guys, for those of you listening or watching, when Becky can attest to how militant I was for an extreme amount of time.
When you ended up and said the bacon brat, I'm like, yeah. And I bet it wasn't uncured, unsweetened bacon either. Because that's how strict she would have been if it wasn't, if there was sugar on the label of the bacon, or if it wasn't, uncured bacon, she wouldn't consume it. I mean, you have made great strides, but
I did not.
Yeah.
Costco had some uncured bacon, and I got some, and I did not like it. It was weird. It was like it didn't taste bad, but I don't know. There was just something about it. It was just like, I don't know. I don't know about this. I like their signature bacon. That's my go-to. I like their signature bacon. I have my yeah. It's not like I said. I had to give up that same thing though. I had to give it up because especially for the bacon stuff. I love bacon. I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but I love bacon.
not at all.
And I was just like going through and searching and all that, and like bacon's expensive as is, let alone getting the fancy bacon that's all the fancy things. And I was just like, I was like, it can't be that bad. I did, and it turns out it wasn't. I did have a glucose monitor on for about a month. I did that experiment, and some of the things that some people would be like, it didn't really make a difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really make a difference. It was less of a headache in my head just to get the signature bacon from Costco, the 4-pack that it came in, and be done with it. And that to me is convenience for me because I can put it in my air fryer. My convenience food has gone from the drive-through to my air fryer. And I think I think that's a great thing for, as for like a switch, as you said, is like that's huge. Like convenience from the freezer to the air fryer. That's convenient for me. Or from the bacon package to the air fryer. Takes as long to do that as it does to go through a drive-through nowadays.
Well, and what do you tell the soccer mom who, has 3 kids and going every which way, and how do you tell them what to eat, right? When it's about, oh my gosh, we're running 500,000 places at the same time with this kid and that kid and this, and we're crossing, and and
purse bacon.
Purse bacon, right? Yeah. But they don't, right? But it's about the drive-through and the convenience, and that's what it is, instead of, and we've been in many meetings where it's like somebody will say, "Oh, I'm going to a wedding," and we're going to be traveling, and oh my goodness, what do I take? And we rattle off like, well, first of all, you got your beef sticks and your bacon and your egg bites and your hard boiled eggs, and you can get into some convenient stuff like I carry carnivore crumbs in my purse. What are some of the things you guys carry? I know you don't anymore, Becky, but no, you do, because you took food when you just went on your last
Yeah.
trip.
Do say we take a cooler when we when we travel. So we'll take a cooler and do it that way. But I still will take jerky. I'll take the beef sticks. I take my Power Fit food bars, the bear bars, which yes, they end up and have honey in them also. So I have convenience foods, but my go-to is typically not to consume them. But I think that's where you got to drop the perfection, right? It's not always going to end up and look like a perfect meal.
What is good enough?
Yeah.
Sometimes we just have to do good enough of what that looks like. And that can be fine too. It's a meal, it's a moment, it's a small clip in time. Then it is the whole picture of all the consistency that you've been doing, right? All the work that you're putting in.
Absolutely.
And
What did you say? It's about now and the next choice is
yeah,
what?
like if something happens, for instance, the sandwich from the sandwich, right? It happened. You can't change it. You shouldn't do anything else to get rid of it, Um, so you just have to take the next right bite, do the next right bite, and then go back to where your daily routine. I think coming to that point where we're demonizing it, and oh, wasn't perfect, and oh, I was this, and oh, I was that, and that's where we ruin ourselves. Or the fact of like, and I'm guilty of this too. Oh, I already did this, so let me just trash the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Let me just trash it. And it doesn't even matter anymore. And I don't think that's the proper way to think either, or we get down on ourselves with it. And it's just like, no, I would say it a million times. First of all, it's food, and maybe it's not optimal, and maybe we're not going to be perfect, but like this situation, if I compared it to when I quit drugs, right? When I didn't want to do drugs anymore, all I had to do was not go to the drug dealer's house, not go to the house where all the people were doing the drugs, right? If I did those two things, I probably was not going to do the drugs that day. If I wasn't around other people, and then I probably didn't have cues and triggers and all of those things, right? With food, the drug dealers are everywhere and everybody's using the drugs. So being kind to ourselves, and I always tell people, the more consistent you get, the more things will start dropping off. Like you'll start to feel better, you'll start to see changes, and then you'll be like, oh, maybe it's time to release this, or maybe it's time to make this next change. It'll all come naturally to you on your journey. It doesn't have to be forced.
Yeah. Well, and just a little wrap up thought here. Your body is living. Every meal, every night of sleep, every moment of rest and repair is a page in your transformation. You don't need to be perfect, right? Or have the perfect macros or that flawless routine or the militant way I was eating for so long, right? Um, you need the rhythm and the return to basics and the protein that builds and then the fats that nourish and the carbs that energize and the sleep that restores. You eat like you're building your legacy. Rest like your cells are really listening, and remember that healing isn't about a hustle, it's about a homecoming, right? It is
Mhm.
a release, and we need to kind of relax into that. Of course, you are welcome to reach out to any one of us, Coach Becky, Coach Sly, or myself, Coach Sherry. We all do take clients individually, so you can reach out to us if you're needing that extra step, that extra helping hand. We are here for you. And Becky, you want to throw up the banner again? Don't forget that you can also come into the BNC community and join us there. It's a group. It's all walks of life, all walks of nutrients, right? Nobody is in there shaming anybody about how to eat. Um, but it's a great group. And if you go to bnccommunity.com, put in the code free and you can join for free. And in a few minutes, we're all going to switch over here to Coach Becky's meeting. Coach Sly does a meeting on Wednesday nights. Which is mental health. I always learn tons from her on that. Um, and then I do a meeting on Fridays called Supercharge Your Mindset during the days on Fridays. So, and Becky, she does so many, I don't even know what to even like tell you what all her
Just
M-
throw a
meetings.
dart. You'll find
Yes,
something.
that's just it. Throw a dart at the calendar, and we pretty much have a meeting, whether it's us or just community members. We're all there to end up and help support. So
So do remember next month we will have Sly back on, and we love it when she joins us. And so we do go live every Monday evening at 7 p.m. Central Time. So do look for us, do like, do comment, and give us suggestions. We're going to start inviting guests back on, and we're going to start building our podcast back up. So, any other parting thoughts, Sly and Becky?
Enjoy
just
the fall weather.
absolutely enjoy the changing of the seasons, and make sure to listen. I know I see I've been following the different platforms that we're streaming to tonight. So I see all the viewers that we have. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next week. Have a wonderful evening.